Tonight, Constantine spends an entire issue locked up in a hotel room yelling at a piece of headwear. No spoilers, but the Suicide Squad finally decides to live up to its namesake, and Green Lantern Corps will show you how badly John Stewart takes his breakup. All that and more tonight on the Not-So-New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 158 of the Not-So-New 52. I am your host and I'm going to try to keep things brief here in the intro, not because I specifically need to, but because I just don't want to take up that much time. There is one thing I wanted to say though. So about 2 weeks ago, it might have been last week honestly, I mentioned how I did a stupid thing and I committed to getting the entire New 52 in single issue format, despite the fact that I already have it in trades. I just wanted to give a little update on that. It's been 2 weeks, almost exactly, since I started. I am a third of the way done. I have 1,000 out of the 3,000 comics I'm going to need. I am not someone to envy. I am not someone to model your life after. Do not make the mistakes that I have made, if not obvious by the fact that we're on episode 158 of this godforsaken show. I will continue to provide updates as I hit other milestones, though, so stay tuned for that. Anyway, this week, what do we got? Well, as with all of the weeks this month, we've got some normal issues. This week it happens to be the weeklies of Batman Eternal and Future's End, along with the long-awaited issue 8 of Superman Unchained. I love how they just committed to it being a bi-monthly series after a while, after they made it a tri-monthly series for a bit in there, because God almighty, this series just needs to end already. And then in terms of the Future's End tie-ins, we've got a significant amount. We've got, in no particular order, Batgirl, Batman, Birds of Prey, Superboy, Green Lantern Corps, Justice League United, World's Finest, Infinity Man and the Forever People, New Suicide Squad, and Constantine. I don't think there's anything that you really need to know in terms of beginning or end stuff. The only one I'll say is that Batgirl, I'm going to put it in the show before Birds of Prey, but I read it in the opposite order. Don't suggest that. If you're going to do this independently, read Batgirls before you do Birds of Prey. Beyond that, yeah, everything else is kind of whatever. Oh, Batman. I guess I should mention, if you have not watched the review of Detective Comics number 27, which was a huge anniversary issue, go find that. I think it's literally the episode title is Detective. So go check out that because Batman's tie-in is heavily tied to that issue. But yeah, so that's pretty much everything you need to know. Beyond that, I don't really have anything else to say, so let's, I don't know where I want to start this week. You know what? I'm going to leave it up in the editing room. I have no idea where this is about to go, so let's find out together. Batman Future's End number 1, written by Scott Snyder and Ray Fawkes, art by Eiko. Don't know if that's supposed to be spelled out or not, but regardless, hey, you remember back in Detective Comics 27, Scott Snyder wrote a story about Batman in the future doing clones of himself so he can always be Batman. Wouldn't you like more of that story? So we pick up 5 years from now and we see that a clone is failing. Its cardiovascular system, everything's just too strained, it's all collapsing and everything's going down, and Batman's standing in front of it. He's very much older and a lot more worse for wear, and he's like, I just don't have what I need. What I need is this thing called the Calder component, and it's super rare, super hard to get, but I tried literally everything else. And Alfred's there, he's got a goatee now at this point, and he's just like, Master Bruce, perhaps maybe don't do this. And he's like, yeah, I don't have a choice, Alfred. Gotham needs Batman, and Batman's got to be me. And he points out, let's take a look at your entire Bat family here. Yeah, you got enough members here. I don't think you need to worry about that. And they also see that, his back got broken in the meantime as well, so he's got like a metal spine that's literally holding him up. And he's just like, no, Batman can never die. I just got to go get the Calder component. That's it. That's all I need. So Alfred says, like, sir, you can't be serious. Like, that place, the only place where it is absolutely lethal. It's off limits to all of your people. There's no way you can make it in even at your best. And he gets in a chair and says, suit me up. So he gets welded into his suit, basically, and saying, like, all right, I got painkillers and stimulants. It's going to give me 40 minutes to get in there. Everything else is just going to hold me up like a puppet. Like, that's the only way I can hope to make it through this. And Alfred, will you man the systems for me, old friend? And Alfred's like, of course, Master Bruce, as always. So Batman flies off into the night, and it turns out the only place where the Calder component is LexCorp building. And so it's under super heavy security, and Batman's like, I got to pull out every trick in the book in order to get in here. First thing, as he's flying in, he's not allowed to touch the walls. So he activates the Allen suit protocol to vibrate through them, so that way he can get in. And as he does, works out perfectly. But the moment he lands, it asks for an identity. And he pulls out a little voice recording of Lex Luthor saying, good morning. And it's like, oh, good morning, Mr. Luthor. And he keeps the recording going, probably like AI stuff, saying like, oh, keep the door open and send the elevator to sub-basement 3. So he sends the elevator down, and he manages to ride on top of it, gets down to where he needs. And as he's passing through one of the corridors, all of a sudden gas starts leaking out. And a hologram of Lex Luthor pops up, and he's like, well, if you've made it this far, you're already a pretty good threat. You've made it past my alpha and beta security, so you're very close. But this is where you die. See, this gas is made to kill absolutely all life forms, both Earth and alien. So if you breathe in, you're going to die. But because I know you're so smart, I know you probably brought an air filtration device, which is perfect because I have some robots here that are tracking the air molecules that you will need to be breathing. Even if the rest of you is hidden, the air molecules won't be. So they start shooting at Batman. Batman throws some tasers or whatnot in order to knock him out, and he manages to get by pretty much no problem. And as he gets in, he tells Alfred, like, hey, filter the suit this way. Be sure to do that. I just need to make sure we're all clear to go here. So he steps into the next room, and Lex's hologram pops up. He's like, hey, man, if you made it into this room, like, congratulations. That's fantastic. You might actually even just be me. That's actually a possibility. So if you've made it in here, all you need to do is speak if you're me, and the room will open up to you. And then Batman just walks right past Luthor, and he's just like, did you think I was tricking you into speaking? I was. This whole thing is all voice activated. Like, everything revolves around audio. So we see Batman uses his rebreathing thing on like a timer in order to trigger the sound effect, and he uses that to sneak right on by the rest of the robots. So he makes it into the next room, and at this point, the holograms, nothing's going to attack here because this is the final room. But Lex isn't going to risk anything going wrong in here. And inside are a bunch of cloning bats, and Batman walks up to one, and he's just like, all right, how much time do I got, Penny-One? Like, am I still good? And he's like, no, you're not. You're dying. You are actually like on the verge of death. What are you doing right now? He's like, oh God. He's cloning Superman still. He's still trying to do that. Oh, geez, I got to blow this whole place up. And so he sets up all these bombs. He does all these things. And he says that the Calder component is only available here because Lex specifically bought out and or killed everyone else who theoretically could make it, strictly so that he'd be the only one who could clone specifically Superman. And he's just like, yeah, nah, it's crazy. He's obsessed. And Alfred's like, yeah, Session. Who could possibly be as obsessed as Lex Luthor? So Batman's ready to destroy the whole lab. And as he starts setting bombs, all of a sudden, big explosion. He's just like, oh God, something's going on. I don't know what's happening. I didn't see anything. All of a sudden, a clone vat's being thrown at his face. He dodges out of the way. Clone comes stumbling out of it. And he's like, oh God. Oh, I know what this is. And we see that it is Bizarro. He's back. And Batman's like, oh God, someone's here with me. So he tries to engage the vibration system again to phase through the wall. He gets through. Bizarro just charges through after him. The Lex hologram activates again. He's like, this message only activates if you've already made it in and have started destroying my lab. You're Batman. No one else could do this except for Batman. In your stupid, misguided worldview, you think you're doing something right here. You're an idiot, Batman. and I'm going to make sure you die here. So Batman's like, shut up, Luthor, I don't got time for this. So he's trying to fight against all these bizarro clones that have broken out of their vats, including the legitimate one. Lex's hologram activates a liquid helium thing in order to cool the entire room, like hundreds of degrees colder than even liquid nitrogen, and then he just drops some bombs on top of it, and he's like, there you go, nobody could have survived that. And even Alfred's like, yeah man, nobody could have survived that. So he's upset because Bruce isn't answering, he doesn't know what's going on. We see that the Batman wrapped himself in his cape right beforehand and activated a cocoon protocol, and underneath the cape we see a hole was either burned out or dug or something. So we see stumbling into the cave is Batman. He's like, Alfred, I did it. Take the thing. Code blue. Oh, God. And so we see him basically flatlining, but then the flatline comes back up. He's got a heartbeat, and it cuts to 9 months later, and Batman's like, hey, the clone is viable. We've got all readings positive. We're going to activate the memory implants and get this guy going. And yeah, it just leads directly into what we saw in Detective Comics 27 of all of the memories up to the night where he says, yes, Father, I will become the Bat, are implanted in the clone, and the clone wakes up, and then Bruce says, like, hey, here's the deal. You get to choose to be Batman. You gonna do it? And he always does. So here's the thing. I don't hate the Detective Comics 27 story. I don't hate this story. I don't hate the idea of Batman being so obsessive in this continuity and saying, there must always be a Batman, and the Batman must always be me, and I will be cloning myself ad infinitum forever. Because in this sort of universe, yeah, cloning yourself makes sense. Like, this is a thing that makes sense that, like, people would be able to do, and Bruce is just obsessive enough about his mission that he would definitely do that. My problem here comes from how the story had to structure itself in order to add on to that. It didn't feel like we needed an edition of the Detective Comics 27. Like, we didn't need backstory of, like, how did the first clone come to be? And it was all this complicated stuff and all this other things going on. Like, that just seemed kind of unnecessary to me. Adding on to the fact that we go back to the Bizarro stuff, LexCorp's the only place where cloning's viable, like all this stuff, it just seemed a little bit roundabout. I'm not saying I didn't enjoy the story. I think it's very well told. It's got some good humor to it as well. I love Lex bantering with Batman, just of saying, like, are you Batman? Are you in here? How dare you? It's a fine enough story. I just feel like it's hitting on something that, even if it's a part of the Batman mythos that I don't dislike, I didn't need any more expansion on. So all in all, I think I'll probably give this one a 7.5. It doesn't quite hit that 8 territory for me, but art-wise, it looks great. Story-wise, it's fine. I can't justify going any lower than that. Batgirl Future's End #1, written by Gail Simone, art by Javier Garron. So 2 years from now, in the future, not the standard 5, we see Barbara Gordon's getting married to a cop. His name is Stephen Harris, and he is a good dude. And she's getting married on the rooftop of GCPD, as far as I can tell. And Alicia's there. Alicia's got a pregnant girlfriend, and everybody's happy, and everyone's having a good time. And as they tie the knot, they kiss, they walk over to the edge of the building, and just like, oh, my husband, I'm so happy to be able to say that. And as we see, there is a chef in the background who's looking awful suspicious. And it turns out that chef is James Gordon Jr. in disguise. And Barbara's narration says, like, oh, I don't blame anybody who works there, or security, or the cops, or all that, because James Gordon Jr. is slippery like that. No, I just blame Gotham. Gotham just sucks. I blame the city. So he pulls out some guns, he aims it at Barbara, and he's, you know, all the cops pull their guns, but he's like, I've got a faster trigger finger, she'll be dead otherwise. And Steven steps up in place, and he's like, hey, do you love my sister? And Steven's like, yes. And he's like, will you do anything to save her life? And he's like, yes. And Gordon's like, jump off the building. And Steven just goes, okay. And he just turns to start, just starts walking over to the edge of the building. And Barbara gets so upset by this, she starts to rush her brother. And before she's able to make contact, Steven has already leapt off the building to his death. And Gordon's just like, well, guess it's time to look for a new husband, huh, sis? And Barbara is so upset. She just loses it. She goes over to Gordon and she's disassociates, and apparently she was told after the fact that like she broke 10 of his bones, dislocated his eye socket, and took 5 cops to tear him off. But regardless, that was the day that broke her. Batgirl no more, and never came back. 3 years later, 5 years from now, we got 3 Batgirls. We have Cassandra, we have Stephanie, and we have Tiffany. And we see that they are currently fighting against a bunch of bikers who I don't even know what their like crime here is, but regardless, they're like, oh, you think we're afraid of the bat? And Stephanie is like, oh, hey, look, Chop Shop guy, we are not representing a Batman. We are representing of the Beast, Bête Noire. So do you really want to fight against us? And it seems like he's about to drop his crowbar that he's doing, but Stephanie gets the upper hand and just attacks him anyway. So rest of Chop Shop guys come in to attack, and Cassandra tells Tiffany to get behind her, and she's just like, I can fight. I am like 12. You're not my mother. And Cassandra's like, do it anyway. And she's like, fine, scary assassin lady. So Stephanie's going in to take out a few of them, but Cassandra's really got pretty much all of them knocked out. And it's at this point that they hear over their comms of how something isn't right. There's no reason anyone would stand up to them once they said they were Bête Noire if they were just so low-level crime guys. And all of a sudden a car comes out of nowhere and tries to run him over. Stephanie jumps on the hood of the car, and they're trying to shoot her. She's like, oh, hey, watch the language. And they say, like, oh, she's such a goofy Batgirl. And it's like, no, she's the bravest. So she swoops around. She manages to use a, as far as I can tell, they call it a gooperang. It's a batarang that makes goop, and it just floods the inside of the car and makes it so they can't drive anymore. They crash into a light post. So at that point, Stephanie and Cass are like having fun and, having a bit of moment. Cass is saying like, you rely too much on weapons. Just like, but you got to try the gooperang though. It's super fun. So they call up Beast over the line, and it's just like, hey, Beast, they got like rocket launchers in the trunk. These guys are gun runners. There's only one group that has the steel to do this in Gotham while it's under your protection. And the Beast is like, oh, I know. It's got to be Bane. So we then see who the Beast is, and it's Batgirl. She is roided out, and she looks like Bane. And we get an explanation, but like it's super weird to see. So we get the justification of her saying like, hey, look, you guys stay back. I'm going to go deal with Bane. And then we get the interstitial of during her time after the wedding, she did nothing for like 6 months, but then she was just like, you know what? I'm going out on the hunt. And we see that she basically ingratiated herself as henchman for all of the big players in Gotham. So she became a henchman to like Riddler and Penguin, and she got into their good graces, learned everything about them, and then just turned on them and beat the ever-loving crap out of them. And she realized, okay, all like 70% of crime syndicates in Gotham gone, but the only one that she had trouble infiltrating was Bane. So she hunted out to his country and just threw herself at his mercy, said, hey, teach me, I am nobody. And it took like 6 months before finally she was allowed to see Bane after she snapped the arm of another guy who was there. And he's just like, come with me. So they hop in a car, they start going. Bane says like, there's a warlord nearby. We're gonna, his bodyguard is like the greatest in all the land, and we're gonna go take him out. And Batgirl's like, does this warlord like do something to us? And he's like, no, but this way he never will. So Bane goes, talks to the bodyguard. Bodyguard's just like, man, I'm gonna straight up kill you. I've never lost a battle. I've done all this stuff. Like, you have no way of being able to defeat me. And Bane's like, I mean, that does sound pretty good, but I went and killed your wife and mother this morning, and then I sat down and had a coffee over their dead bodies. And he's like, you lie, and he rushes in to fight. Bane just grabs him, snaps him over his leg, and just says like, no, I wasn't. And he points over to the guy and just says like, all right, you're warlord, and all of you work for me now. Don't forget it. And as Bane's walking off, Batgirl's like, was that story actually true? And Bane's just like, no, of course not. I hate coffee. So Bane trains Batgirl, continues fighting like every day, just sparring constantly. And she's like, in a way, I did feel like he was a father figure at some point. And Bane's like, why do you keep fighting me? Like, surely you understand that, like, I'm cool with you now. Why are you still trying to kill me, whatnot? And she's like, you don't understand. I don't want to beat you. I want to be you. And so Bane offers up Venom and says, this is what you need, man. Take the drugs. Do it. And we see that she became the Black Beast, Bête Noire, and she had an opportunity to kill Bane, but she didn't, and she just walked out and left him and never saw him again. And when she came back to Gotham, she adopted some of Bane's clothing choices. She's ripped, and she's finally able to take on Bane now. So she comes back. She knows Bane left a message in the Batcave or wherever it is she's at, saying, "Hey, I know I'm watching your 3 little Batgirls. I'm keeping an eye on them. I've got a detonator for 6 bombs around the city. You'll never be able to stop them or find them in time, so you've got to come face me directly, all right? So let's do this." And she's like, "Fine, I'm coming." So they go out to a bridge. All the Batgirls are told to stay in place. And by the way, Tiffany, for anyone who didn't know, is the Tiffany that is the daughter of Lucius Fawkes. So that's going on. As the Batgirls arrive back at the cave, she left a heartfelt message basically saying, like, "You all have made me so proud. I may not have ever shown it, but, like, you all are the person that I most want to be." So we cut over to the bridge. The Beast is meeting up with Bane, and he's just like, "Oh, I know who you are, Barbara. I've known it before. Like, you think I wouldn't know? I'm Bane. Like, what do you expect?" And he points out, like, "And now I finally understand why you did everything you wanted to do. You wanted to lose again. You wanted me to break you. You wanted to go back into your wheelchair. Like, that's clearly what all this was leading to. So just say it. Just say that's what you wanted." She's like, "No, that's not true at all." And she, like, has a moment where she freaks out for a second, but then she throws a punch into Bane's face and just like, "No, you never understood me at all." And then he's like, "Okay, but, like, it's still true, especially after your husband, right?" And then she panics again. And she's like, "Is this right? Did I come here wanting to die?" And then she, like, immediately Bane's just on his knees and just like, "No, Bane, this won't work. It's not going to work with me. See, I know the way you function. You need to crush their soul first. You did that with the swordsman in the desert. You tried to do it with Batman, but, like, I've already lost everything. And I'm still here because guess what, Bane?" And she rips off her mask and she's like, "I want to live. I want to live every single day. And by the way, I never took your stupid venom. I got this ripped naturally. So suck it." And she beats the crap out of him, almost tosses him over the bridge, but he drops the detonator, and it was a dead man switch, so you got 10 seconds before it goes off. And in swoops Tiffany, the youngest Batgirl, saying, "I got it," and they tie up Bane, they manage to knock him out, and it's just like, "Oh, hey, we know you told us to stay away, but, like, we didn't. Are you cool with that?" And she's like, "Oh, absolutely. You guys did good, really good. I'm so happy you're here." And final narration is, in another way, in a more loving way, Batgirl never really left at all, and we see that she cares about all of them. So, cool. It's a good enough story. It made some weird choices, but you know what? I think the best part out of it for me is the future Batgirls. I like that, mainly because it kind of happened almost on the exact same time scale as well. Like, 2019, 2020 was around the time that, like, Cassandra Cain, Batgirl, and Stephanie Brown Batgirl got their own books and stuff like that. It kind of followed a more nice version of things. So all in all, not a bad issue. I think it's just a little bit weird with its bouncing back and forth of, like, does she want to die? Does she not want to die? And it's like over the course of 2 panels, we switch like 3 times. So beyond that, I think I'll probably end up giving this one like a 7. I think the opening's stronger than the ending. And even then, the opening's a bit hokey with the old James Jordan Jr. thing killing the husband. But it's just some light fun. Birds of Prey, Future's End, #1, written by Christy Marx, art by Scott McDaniel and Robson Rocha. So we open up 3 years from now instead of 5, and we get the viewpoint of this woman who was human trafficked. We see that she was from a poor country. Someone promised to bring her and a bunch of other women to America, and then all of a sudden they were forced into slavery, put into a brothel. But this young woman put up a fight. She refused to do what she was told, and therefore she was basically put on death row with this place, and she was going to be killed very soon. But then all of a sudden, she came, and we see that she is Black Canary, leader of the Red League, who I guess are like League of Assassins, and she's like, "Don't be afraid, I'm here to save you all." So we see that these ninjas being led by Black Canary are being commanded to bring all the people who were captured out. More people with guns show up. So Black Canary's like, all right, you guys go do your thing. Hey, you young girl, put in these earplugs. They block out a very specific frequency that I don't want you being able to hear. And as she puts them in, Black Canary uses her canary cry to take out the remaining traffickers, and then they're beaten up by ninjas. And the young girl's like, are you killing them? And just like, no, but we're making sure they can't use any weapons anytime soon. So all of the Red League members have names from the, I believe it's Greek alphabet, of like Phi, Delta, Beta. That might be Roman now that I think about it. But regardless, he sends them off saying, hey, go get all their technology. We're going to make sure that we find everything else about them, and then we're going to take them to justice and whatnot. So she goes to all the girls and says, you'll all receive medical care first. If you want to head back to your home country, we'll take you there. If you want to stay put in America, we'll gladly set up lives for you here as well. You are completely safe. And she turns to the young girl who's the narrator, and it's just like, do you want to go home to your family? And she's like, no, my family's dead. I got nothing to live for. And she's like, well, here's the thing. I heard that you put up a fight. I've seen evidence of that. You were on death row and whatnot. Join my group. It seems like you got a lot of moxie. Be one of the Red League. And she's like, seriously, me? And he's like, yep, you will be Chi. So we then cut forward 2 years to the 5 years from now, and we see Chi has fully become one of these ninjas. And all of a sudden, one of the ninjas comes in and says, hey, we decrypted this file from this other guy. All of the trafficking rings in Gotham go back to this guy named Paul Howe III. And Black Canary's like, great, our years of work have paid off. Let's go, Red League. We're going to take this out of the source. We're going to cut the head off the snake. So we see that this Paul guy is super rich. He's got a mansion and all that. It's tons of security. And Black Canary's just like, oh, yeah, no, it's great and all that. But, like, we've got tons of better stuff. So they jam all the security and they make sure to take out everything they can. And then they start rushing the place and they jump over the walls. Dogs are coming after them. They take out the dogs with canary cries, and same with the guards. They're attacked by ninjas. And Canary looks up in the window and sees Paul up there looking down at them. And he's just like, all right, well, he knows we're coming, but good. And that means that he'll be filled with terror in his last few moments. So Canary sends some ninjas to be covering all the escapes, when all of a sudden, at the front door is Batgirl. But Batgirl now goes by the name, I believe it's Bête Noire, maybe Beat Noir, regardless, the Black Beast is what it translates to. And she is roided out and dressed like Bane. And Black Canary is like, okay, everyone else stop fighting her. This is for me. What the hell is going on, Batgirl? And Batgirl's just laying into Canary, just throwing punches. She's like, no, there's no Batgirl here. It's Bête Noire. And she's just like, okay, Bête Noire, what's up, man? You've changed. What's going on? She's like, oh, I can say the same of you. You took over the League of Assassins. You took the mantle of Ra's al Ghul. Like, what's up with that? And you're coming into my city trying to kill this innocent man, this man under my protection. And immediately Canary's like, I'm sorry. First off, I took over the League of Assassins so I could destroy it. Secondly, you are protecting this dude? Like, what? Are you kidding me? And Batgirl's like, well, I skipped over a bit here where she explains, all of the people, ninjas in the group are women who were abused and whatnot. They're here to serve justice, blah, blah, blah. And she treats them with respect. They all have names. They're all real people, not like the League of Assassins were. And as Black Canary gets knocked down, so does Batgirl. And she's like, I'm still your friend, Barbara. You got to remember that. And she's like, Barbara Gordon's dead. So Black Canary says, hey, I searched for you for years. I don't know what happened to you, but like, you're not the type of guy to protect this guy, right? And Batgirl's like, I checked his record. He worked his way up the hard way. He's a philanthropist. He gave away millions of dollars. And she's like, okay, well, I have evidence that he is the head of a human trafficking ring that is engulfing all of Gotham. And she's like, okay, do you have evidence of that? And she's like, yes, it's right here. I'm going to deliver it to authorities, and he's going to face justice. And Batgirl's like, all right, fair enough. If you've got evidence, then I have no reason to interfere. Bye-bye. So she just leaves, and Black Canary is just like, hey, you don't got to be alone, right? You can join the fight. Like, we can just do Birds of Prey again if that's what you want to do. And she's like, no. You're right, I don't have to do this alone, but where one Batgirl may be gone, others will take her place. So if all the exits were still covered, Black Canary knows this guy's inside. She rushes up the stairs, and turns out, having seen Black Canary coming, the dude took the easy way out and killed himself. So he's dead. And one of the ninjas is like, oh, I wanted to see him rot in prison. He escaped us. And Black Canary makes it clear, oh, no. We already leaked this to the media. His name will be dragged through the mud, and everyone will know, even in death, what a horrible monster he was. So screw that. Let's get out of here. And they all just leave the place and says, all right, Red League, let's find our next prey. So, yeah, the Batgirl bit. So this came out the same week as the Batgirl New 52, like, not New 52, Future's End bit. So it is a shock to see this if you didn't read that first, which I did not. So definitely make sure if you haven't checked out Batgirl's tie-in, check that out. But for this one, it simultaneously feels like a run ender because this is the last thing of Birds of Prey. Christy Marx is wrapping up a run with this, but at the same time, like, it's not. I felt like Birds of Prey did not end satisfyingly on its own in issue 34, and I don't feel like this is any more satisfying. It is a little bit there to see, like, okay, at least she kind of made up with Barbara in the end, but did she? Yeah, I don't know. It's a fine enough what if, but it doesn't really feel like an interesting enough furthering a Black Canary story. It just kind of throws in a bunch of stuff and says, and now she's leader of the League of Assassins. Okay. So I'm going to give this one, I'll give it a 7. It's a low 7, but it's a 7. I had enough fun with it, and I think that the shock page of Batgirl dressed like Bane is like, okay, sure, yeah, we can go with that. So 7 at the very least. Superboy Future's End #1, written by Frank Barbiere, art by Ben Caldwell. So we open up in New York City. Guardian and Rose Wilson are apparently on the same team, riding on a motorcycle away from some giant flying robots. And just like, all right, well, we need to wrap this up now. And Guardian calls out for backup. And Superboy responds saying, sorry, I can hear you, but I'm a little bit tied up right now. And we see that he's currently plummeting off the edge of a building, attacked by his own flying robot. He snaps its neck off, tosses the head aside, and then as he's falling to the ground, a girl named Roxy, who apparently is also one of the team, is like, you know, for a guy who can't fly, you sure do have a nasty habit of falling to your death. So she comes in, and she has some amount of telekinetic ability. She ends up saving Superboy. And Superboy calls over, being like, hey, Guardian, you still need help? And we see that Rose has completely chopped this robot to pieces, so no problem at all. And they're like, all right, let's head back to the base. So they got their base set up on Governor's Island, former home of the Teen Titans. And as they walk in, they're like, yeah, this is from the Superboy, like, whatever, all the bad Superboys throughout the multiverse or whatever, because I guess we're still dealing with that. And it's like, yeah, my cyborg brother's been out of commission for a while. This is just cleaning up his leftovers, so should be good. But, like, most of the clones are gone. The missing ones, I'm sure they'll turn up. But, like, I want you guys to know, we're not a team. Don't come and help me. I want to handle this on my own. This is my fight. You guys just stay out of it. And everyone's like, okay, yeah, sure. So Connor goes back to his... or Khan goes back to his bunk, and Roxy meets up with him, just like, hey, is everything all right? I know you've been through a lot. And he's like, yeah, you know, this virus that I got, it's making me weaker. I can't even fly anymore. And I'm supposed to, like, be a clone of Superman. I'm supposed to, like, be on his level. I'm just letting him down most of all. And Roxy's like, hey, you never gave up on me. That's pretty super if you ask me. Now, me and you were in a bunk. How about we make out? So they go ahead and do that. Meanwhile, over in Times Square, all of a sudden there's a big disturbance, and 3 Superboys just appear, along with some weird, like, with squid tentacle things in this single panel that I swear to God just never show up again. I don't know what it means. Anyway, they're just like, we made it, great. And they start just blowing up stuff. They're just like, all right, just waiting until he shows up. We're just drawing him out. Everyone raise some hell. So alarms start going off. And it's like, dimensional breach. And immediately Khan's like, it's him. It's them. Everybody stay here. I'm going out to finish this. Nobody follow me. He slams the door, and Roxy's like, oh, Khan. So he hops on a flying motorcycle, we see one of the Superboys is going to attack an elderly woman and a child, and as they're about to launch their like energy beam or TK ability, he jumps in the way and stops it. And they're like, oh, finally, brother. Look, we've hunted the universe looking for you, and we've been absorbing the other Superboys, gaining their power. But now you will complete us, and with the cure. And Superboy's like, hold up. You think there's a cure? There's no cure. We're all going to die, but I'm going to make sure I die last. So they're just like, all right, whatever, let's end this. So they start attacking Khan. He immediately attacks one of them that's like cybernetic and just starts beating the ever-living crap out of him. He's like, I'm so sick of you. And then all of a sudden, he gets thrusted away by an energy blast. And I'm going to call him the evil Superboy, despite the fact they're all evil, steps up and is like, all right, well, Cyborg Superboy, you are no longer a use. And he sucks the life out of him, absorbs his essence, and gets his power. So he throws a punch at Khan. Khan goes flying, and then, wouldn't you know it, he lands like right in the middle of his group, Rose, Guardian, and Roxy. And there's like, you guys suck at following orders, but fine, whatever. Superboy, stand down. And he's just like, yeah, you and what army? So they start working as a team. They go up against, I don't know, helmeted Superboy. I'm sure they all have actual terms, but regardless, they start going up against him. Khan's going up against the main evil Superboy. And he's just like, oh, Khan, you've slowed down with this virus. Meanwhile, we are going stronger than you can imagine. And Khan just punches him in the face. So the evil Superboys end up colliding. And the main evil Superboy's like, all right, we're being embarrassed. I'm not doing this. And he just flips around and absorbs the energy out of the helmeted Superboy. And it's just like, okay, that's weird. But this time is different. And as he absorbs this Superboy, he grows into this giant, mutated, horrific-looking thing. And he's just like, oh, I thought we could... You would be the key to all this, and then I wouldn't have to do this, but I performed an alternate solution, and now my final gift will be watching your world die. So at that point, he's throwing punches. He's got a bunch of strength behind him, and Guardian throws out like, hey, let's launch the same plan that we used back when we fought the terror drone. And Rose is like, got it. She launches in. Roxy's like, I'm sorry, I don't remember that one. What am I supposed to do in that plan? And Guardian's like, get underneath him. And when Rose does her thing, make sure you can't go anywhere with your TK abilities. And she's like, right. So as they go off to do their thing, Superboy turns to Guardian. He's like, Guardian, thank you for not letting me be a stupid emo loner. I needed that. Guardian's like, no problem, man. Let's do this. So Rose walks in, starts chopping and slashing, like getting him all distracted and whatnot. Roxy takes the opportunity to lift him up off the ground with her TK abilities. And as they're doing so, Superboy rushes in, grabs hold of this engine machine that's like grafted onto evil Superboy. I swear to God, I don't know where it even came from. Regardless, he literally launches through the dude's stomach, so he's like definitely dead. And as he jumps up, he grabs it into the sky. It explodes. Roxy's all concerned, says, Khan, no, and he ends up falling down into the middle of Times Square. As the thing explodes, it makes fireworks. So Khan comes to, and everyone's looking up just like, ooh, look at the fireworks. And Superboy goes, oh, I hope the city enjoys the show, but I think we could use some rest. And Guardian says, you've earned it, Superboy. So that's the final issue of Superboy. I'm all right with it. I don't feel strongly about it, but if I really have to, like, am I okay with this being the way that Superboy leaves off? Yes. I think, you know, in the last issue of Superboy, we had the return of Khan after he was seemingly killed for a while. I think having an issue where it shows, like, yeah, he's been depowered significantly, but, like, ultimately, he's still in a good place. He's got some friends, and you know, a lot of stuff has happened. I'm okay with this future for him. I'm not opposed to it. So, all in all, I'll probably end up giving this one just a. Here's the thing: I want to say a flat 7, but then I look at the art style, and some of the panels look really good, and some of the panels look really bad. And maybe that's a personal preference thing, but I can't quite give it a 7. So I'm going to lower it to a 6.5. But it is an all right ending for Superboy for people who wanted to see that series succeed and then just kept getting disappointed by the Lebdelian-ness of it all. Green Lantern Corps Futures End #1, written by Van Jensen, art by a lot of people. Igor Lima, Rui Jose, Rodney Buscemi, Geraldo Borges, and I think that's it. So this issue picks up. Something has happened to the Green Lantern Corps. A whole bunch of shakeups have happened in the in-between. And we see that there's a thing called the Shadow Empire that is fighting against them to some extent. So we're in Space Sector 666. A few Lantern Corps members are talking about the Shadow Empire and how, like, oh yeah, a couple of the Green Lanterns we've got now have actually served with the Guardians. Can you believe that? And then all of a sudden something shows up on their radars. They're freaking out because it's coming in quick. And they're like, oh, well, we got to take it down. Here we go. So they start firing off everything they got. And as they see what they're firing at, it just blasts through their ship and leaves them in, like, the coldness of space. And we see it's John Stewart. And they're all just like, oh God, not him. Jesus Christ, I'm so sorry, Lantern Stewart. And he's like, oh, well, if you're going to attack, you better be ready for a counter attack. So he leaves them alive, despite the fact that they're convinced he's going to kill them. And he says, like, oh no, the Corps needs you to be cannon fodder. So John comes down to the planet. He meets up with Kilowog and Salak, and he's basically like, hey, man, your new recruits suck. And he's like, yeah, you say that about all the new recruits, man. But this bunch still hasn't promised to him. So John basically says, hey, you know, I've got some news, some other stuff going on. But, like, for the main thing, you guys are trying to launch a mission, I guess, to take back Oa. And because I guess Oa has reformed and all this sort of stuff, they're like, why would you want that? Like, it's got too much bad blood on it. And they're like, no, it's a symbol. Like, Space Sector 0 is important for us to control, and it's sacred ground or whatnot. And John's just like, sacred? Since when have we been about religion and sacred and all that sort of stuff? Screw that. So it turns out that two people that they sent in order to try to control this planet, Von Daggle and Raimi Hole, are being intercepted by a, quote, old friend. And they're basically like, yeah, okay, we know we shouldn't have left him alive, but we did, and now he's escaped and he's taking that control of them. And John's like, nah, man, he needs to die. We got to kill him. One shot to the brain. That's what it all takes. And Salak's like, hey, man, if you're volunteering, like, we go ahead, man. We want to send you in. And he's like, fine, but I need a spotter. So he goes down to the mess hall. We see Druk and Fesca. Some of the newer recruits from the Green Lantern Corps book have become members in their own right. They're having a good meal, and they're like, oh yeah, it's been 6 years since Oa detonated. And then John comes in, and he's just like, hey, Fesca, I need you. You're going to be my spotter. So we then cut over to Oa with the remains of it, and we see the Shadow Empire is taking it over. And there's this one dude standing above saying, like, ah, yes, we've got these two Green Lanterns, and we're going to sacrifice them. And then miles away, we see John and Fesca setting up like a sniper position. They're ready to kill this leader guy. And she's like, oh, okay, make sure to compensate for gravity and do all that other stuff. And he manages to just kill like every other member of the Shadow Empire here, except for the main guy, who it turns out is Morrow, another one of the new recruits who was quiet and like kept to himself. And he's defected. He's become a member of the Shadow Empire, and he's just like, oh, the Shadow Empire gave me a voice, and that's what I always lacked with the Corps and whatnot. So he goes off running as Von Daggle and his partner are freed. And Von Daggle warns, like, hey, Morrow's slippery, don't let him get away. And John's just like, yeah, totally not. But, like, you guys are getting off the planet. So Fesca takes the two of them, gets them off the planet. Meanwhile, he comes after Morrow, who's trying to, like, scale a cliff face with a sniper rifle in hand. And he's just like, all right, this is it. I'm just going to kill you now. And he pulls the trigger and, like, doesn't waste any time. But before he can, Indigo Tribe member shows up. Gets in the way, Indigo 1, and he's just like, oh, I wouldn't be surprised that you're here. You're with the Shadow Empire after you betrayed all of us. And she's like, no, we're still neutral. We're not with you guys, but like, I'm here to pick up a new member of the Indigo Tribe, Morrow over here. And he's like, are you freaking Look, I understand that your entire Corps is nothing but like serial killers who are being led astray by your rings, but like, this dude needs to die. And the Indigo One's just like, you know nothing of it. Like, who's to say you're not being led astray by your ring? Like, who's to say it doesn't have a mind of its own? And he's just like, I do. It's willpower. No duh, it doesn't have a mind of its own. And she's like, oh, well, you are mistaken that I know nothing about this. So she launches, like, some attacks at John. John starts trying to fight him off. And as Morrow is trying to like run away in the background, Indigo turns around just like, no. As for you, do you have no compassion? Do you have no care that you betrayed your Lantern Corps? And that's where he says the whole thing of like, oh, the Lantern Corps didn't give me a voice, but now the Shadow Empire did. But thank you, Indigo One, for hearing me out and allowing me to stall while reinforcements arrive. So rest of the Shadow Empire shows up. Indigo One and John have to fight together. John's ready to just go out shooting like crazy. But Indigo One's like, no, better idea. And then teleports them away. And he teleports them to the rubble of Xanshi, which for those of you who know your Green Lantern lore is the planet that John Stewart blew up and resulted in the genocide of like God knows how many people. And John's just like, I know what I did here. I lived with it. I made my peace with it. I'm over it. And Indigo Tribe was just like, no, you're not. You kidding me? So then we teleport over to the beaches of Zezin, where John's like, why'd you take me here? Like, this is where we beat the Durlans. This was a good moment, all things considered. And she's like, no, this is the moment where you lost Fatality, like that you discovered that she was replaced with a Durlan. Clearly, you were not over this one. And he's just like, nah, I did move it on. And she basically asks like, oh, well, you take on all these suicide missions. Is your only goal in life to die now? And he's like, no, my goal is to kill. So he makes a construct gun, starts shooting at Indigo One, makes a knife, and manages to charge her and stab it into her gut. And as she's like bleeding out, he's like, oh, God, I didn't think that would actually, I didn't mean to. Oh, God. So Indigo One transports him one more time, takes him to the Indigo Tribe planet. And he's just like, hey, Indigo Tribe, help me out here. I didn't mean to. I swear to God, this is all a mistake. And he's just like, no. It's too late. She's going to die. But she knew this. And Indigo One reveals, I didn't go to collect Morrow. I went to get my replacement, someone to lead the Indigo Tribe. I choose you, John Stewart. You can have the compassion. You're someone strong enough to do so. So she dies. A ring leaves her finger, finds the compassion in John Stewart, and John Stewart becomes an Indigo Tribe member. So the willpower leaves him. His Green Lantern ring goes off his finger, and we are left seeing John Stewart saying knock as he becomes an Indigo Tribe member. And that is it. That is the issue. On the current trajectory of John Stewart having just figured out Fatality as a Durlan, yes, I understand this storyline and how he would possibly become this violent. That being said, I feel like if you were to realistically map out 5 years worth of stories, there's no way John Stewart ends up in this place of like the sniper, the guy who just kills everyone with no second thought or anything like that. That seems a bit extreme. That being said, him becoming the Indigo Tribe leader, I'm more okay with. I think it's an interesting concept at the very least. I'm not saying I want to ever see it happen, but for this little what if into the future, interesting enough. I'll probably give this one like a flat 7. It's not doing anything too outrageous, but at the same time, I'm not that interested in it because it definitely feels less like this is the future of John Stewart and more like a what if John Stewart went crazy. So 7 for this, but not a bad read at all. Justice League United Future's End #1, written by Jeff Lemire, art by Jed Dougherty. So we pick up 5 years in the future with a truck driver making his way across Canada, some specific ice road I've never heard of, and he's calling out to somebody on his radio when all of a sudden a polar bear crosses the road, and he says, what? That's weird. That's not normal around here. And then we see the polar bear has its brain in like a glass dome, and there's a bunch of technology covering it. And he's like, what in the hell is going on here? So he honks his horn at the polar bear, and the polar bear fires lasers out of its eyes, to which he jumps out of the truck and scrambles to safety. But there is no safety because he meets up with a guy riding and controlling a herd of technologic polar bears who calls himself the Demon Raider, and or possibly the Polargeist. He goes by a lot of names here, but regardless, he's like, yeah, I control all these things. I'm taking your cargo with me, but my polar bears need to feed, so we're going to eat you. And then all of a sudden, a cold wind blows in, and we see Equinox. That's her name. Her in the comics, up until this point, she's been Mayabin, I'm not sure the pronunciation, but regardless, she's Equinox now, and she has some amount of ice powers. So she starts blowing The guy off the polar bears, as soon as his tech is disconnected, they all run away, so he's just left alone. And she's just like, oh, you've been terrorizing people along this coast for weeks, and now I finally caught up with you. And she just freezes him in a block of ice. And she goes to the truck driver, and he's just like, oh, hey, Equinox, my girls are big fans. Did you just kill that guy? And no. He's in a block of ice. It's just safe for transport. He'll survive. No problem. But then all of a sudden, she gets like a pounding headache. And we see it is a mental communication from Martian Manhunter saying, hey, if you can hear me, everything's gone wrong. They are free. And she's like, oh, that's not good. Sorry, truck driver. I gotta bounce. And she just leaves behind the Demon Raider guy. So we then go to San Diego a few hours later, and we meet up with Animal Man and his daughter Maxine. And she's grown up a little bit since we last saw her, and Equinox lands in their pool, and Maxine's super happy to see her, and Animal Man's like, hey, Maxine, how about you go inside and do anything but be out here? And she's like, yeah, I get it. You're talking superhero stuff with Equinox. No, I used to be a superhero before. And he's like, yep, totally, but not anymore. I made a promise to your mom. So once they get alone, Animal Man's like, hey, yeah, I got the blast from John too. It seems like a big deal. We should probably deal with that. And she's like, yeah, well, we got to go to Mars. We have to help him. And he's like, I mean, I can't. I've sworn off the superhero stuff. I'm not doing that anymore. And so they sit down for a drink real quick, and Miavin's like, well, I can't really go to anybody else. The team's kind of broken up. Supergirl's definitely not going to want to do it with me. Stargirl's off doing her own thing in space. And Alana and Adam are not okay after what happened with Ultra. So Animal Man's like, I'm sorry, but like really I can't. But this could be a big enough threat for you to call in the actual Justice League. So we then go to the Fortress of Justice, which is, you know those things in like zombie apocalypses where it's like a central base and then like a whole big thing up top? It's that, but in the middle of a desert with like an electric fence. And as soon as Miavin lands, immediately some turrets come up and they're just start like, oh, you're metahuman detected. It's not registered. You're going to get shot. And she freezes them with ice. And then all of a sudden Cyborg and Volstock from the Aquaman and the others comes out, and they're like, oh, Miavin, hey, yeah, you just weren't on our list. Like, if you just said who you were, we would have been cool. No problem. What's going on? And she's like, hey, we got a telepathic message from Martian Manhunter. It's a whole thing. He said they had gotten free. And immediately Cyborg and Volstock are like, oh, that's impossible. Oh, God. So we go inside. We see that the Justice League now consists of, oh, God, what's her name? Dawnstar from the Legion of Superheroes, Stormguard, who's just a new guy, Vostok, Flash, and Cyborg. That seems to be all of them. And Cyborg gives the breakdown to Stormguard because he's not familiar with what's going on. There is a super prison on Mars to deal with the worst of the worst of the worst. The ones that cannot be contained here on Earth. People like Mongol and such like that. And they are all kept in passive captivity by Martian Manhunter's telepathy, along with a bunch of other security measures on top of it. Like, it's a lot of stuff, but mainly the Manhunter thing. So if Martian Manhunter's calling out saying they have gotten free, then there's a big problem out on Mars. So immediately they're just like, okay, so what do? We got to go in there. I know that, you know, John needs our help. We got to go. And apparently Cyborg is leader of the Justice League at this point. He's like, well, none of the alarms have been tripped, but Manhunter's not picking up any calls. So yeah, we got to go and we got to check it out. So they hop on a Justice League shuttle. And this is like very briefly after Oliver Green Arrow died. So everyone's talking about that. They're just like, oh man, I can't believe Batman didn't show up to the funeral. And Flash is like, hey, Batman's got his own way of grieving. You just got to respect that. So they get to Mars. They land next to the place. Immediately, they start doing like a recon thing, trying to figure out what's going on. But then Equinox has another vision. And this time it's of Manhunter chained down in one of the lower decks of the halls. And he's like, hey, I'm in your mind. There's a telepath here. He's a powerful one. He's blocking me from doing this. But like, you've got to stop him. And she's like, who is it? And he's like, oh, it's K. And then he gets blacked out, like the call in. So she's like, okay, I just got another one. There's a lot of stuff going on here. We got to get down there now. But then all of a sudden, doors bust open and we get Killer Frost, Mongol, Blockbuster, and a guy named McDaniel. I understand why Mongol and Blockbuster are here. The other two are a little bit strange of choices, but regardless, everyone's like, okay, we can't let them get to the ship. They'll just go back to Earth. We got to start beating them down here. So they start the fight at this point. Meanwhile, Stormguard and Equinox make their way inside the building as best they can. Equinox uses her ice powers on Killer Frost to get by because apparently Canadian winters are much colder than even Killer Frost could possibly imagine. So they get in, and they see that a bunch of the cells are still standing. In fact, it only looks like these 4 specifically were broken out of their cells, and they were broken out from, like, the outside in. So somebody came by and broke them out. And as they get into the room where Equinox saw John, it turns out Gorilla Grodd is there, and he's just chilling. And Manhunter's like, oh, you shouldn't have come. It's all a trick. He wants off. You can't let him off the planet. And they're like, Grodd, seriously, you? And he's like, oh, no, not just me. Like, yes, I'm a powerful enough telepath to make you believe that Martian Manhunter was doing these things, but I wasn't powerful enough to overcome him in the first place. That belongs to our dear leader, the worst killer that the universe has ever known. And all of a sudden, Stormguard gets blasted, and we see it's Captain Atom. Okay. I'll be honest, didn't see that coming. This is followed up in Justice League Future's End #1. So it's all right. I don't know. It didn't feel like we really did much of anything over the course of the issue. It's just kind of all building up to, oh no, Captain Atom, and like, what does that mean? How are we going to fight him? And I'm sure they will. Like, I'm not... I don't know. This feels like one of those things where it's a twist just for the hell of having a twist. Like, they wanted to tell a story, and yeah, it was an okay enough little setup, but ultimately it was just all set up just to get to the twist. Even the fight scene, like, I kind of glossed over, but it's only because nothing really happened. They just punched them a bunch, and then they went down. It wasn't even, like, interesting that Mongol was there. Like, Cyborg just blasted Mechaneer borderline off-panel. So it's an interesting setup for what the Justice League issue will be, but ultimately that's all it is. I gotta give this one like a 6.5. It's not breaking the 7 category with that, so here's hoping. World's Finest Future's End #1, written by Paul Levitz, art by Yildiray Cinar. So we pick up on Cadmus Island, and we see the beach of the island where a hand is out coming from the earth. It pauses for a moment as an OMAC robot walks by, and as it comes out, we see that it is Karen Starr, aka Power Girl, and she's talking, saying like, ah, man, this place sucks. Everything here feels awful. I literally cannot believe that I'm here right now. Nothing can survive this except for me. So we get the backstory that she's here because this place has been hidden. Nobody can see or hear anything on there except for her. Her super hearing allows her to specifically hear the screams of Helena, aka Huntress, on this island. She's like, well, that's enough for me. So she busts into a room. She uses some x-ray vision to see what's inside. Sees it's a laundry room. She's like, perfect. Gonna go in here, switch out my outfit. So she takes off her costume, throws on a random outfit that she's seen other people wear around the island enough that she knows she could get around somewhat carefree without it. So she throws her costume into a dryer and then uses her heat vision to cause a dryer fire to allow all of the OMACs nearby to focus on that, and allows her to make an escape. So she does her supervision around the island briefly, and she sees, I'm blanking on her name. I want to say Tanya. Well, I think it'll come up later. But regardless, she's like, I don't know if she's friendly or not. She's walking around the island. I can't trust her yet. I got to do this on my own. So morning comes and we see her just continuing to look around. She uses her x-ray vision and sees a medical room where the inside has a bunch of human bones and machine parts. And the sign on the back, or the box that it's in, says the Steel vivisection results. So I guess Steel is dead. And she just starts freaking out. She's like, oh my god, what? I should just destroy this place, man. This is crazy. Like, they have gone too far. Everything is worse every time I look around. And all of a sudden, as she's freaking out a little bit, this woman comes up and says, hey, cool your jets, man. Calm down. Like, stop freaking out. The OMACs will spot you. And she's like, oh, I'm not. And she's like, no, don't say anything. Don't talk. Just chill. Like, the Omacs are currently going to take care of Faraday. He's flying around the island, so get out of here, get out of sight. And she's like, oh, thank you. She's like, okay, all right. So there are some good people on this island. So as she walks around, she sees Hawkgirl is being led by a couple of Omacs and Deathstroke, and she's like, oh man, Hawkgirl, she was the best. What is she doing getting caught? And she gets a little bit lost in thought when all of a sudden Deathstroke notices her and says, hey, who are you and what are you doing on the island? You got 1 second. And she freezes up. She's like, all right, well, guess that's it for subtle. So Deathstroke tries to stab her with his sword, and it just bounces off her skin, no problem. She's like, all right, fair enough. So he pulls out a gun, starts unloading fire on her. Doesn't do anything, except, of course, her jumpsuit now has the boob window from the explosions of his ammo. And he's like, oh, who are you? And she's like, oh, someone who hasn't sold their soul like you. So she tries to fly away, just away from Deathstroke. He manages to jump up, tackle her, and she's like, nah, that ain't happening. So she picks him up and just throws him back down to the ground, and Omac catches him so he's not completely killed. And then all of a sudden, she runs into a little girl with pigtails, and she says, that's not very nice, lady. And immediately she's like, oh my god, a little girl. What have you done, Cadmus? What have you done to this creature? Little girl, I promise I will save you. I will get you out of here. And she's like, what are you talking about? You want to take me away? I don't like you. And so Karen goes to fly away because she knows she needs to do that first. And then all of a sudden, this girl, who is of course 50 Sue, just launches a barrage of massive energy at her and just blasts her in through a wall. And Karen is immediately like, okay, so you're like an apocalyptic monster or something? And she's like, nope. I'm just a little girl. That's all I am. And she blows up some more stuff. Karen is just like, all right, I'm done with this. I'm out. Peace. And she just tries to fly away. So Momax give chase. She manages to beat them up with each other. And then, of course, 50 Sue, being all powerful as she is, uses her energy to reach up, pull Karen back down to the earth, and then just wail on her. And she's just like, oh, I was talking to you, lady. Now everyone will have to see that you get punished. So as a crowd is gathering to watch Karen scream out in anguish, all of a sudden, I believe Tanya, once again, she's like, all right, this woman is what gave me my powers to begin with. She gave me everything. I'm not just standing by. So she uses her strength to rip up the pavement underneath 50 Sue and distract her, saying like, oh, you're all a crowd of filthy sadists. This is the last straw. And then 50 Sue just turns around and says, okay, no, I'm focused on you. So she just starts wailing on Tanya and just starts knocking her down to the ground. And as she's screaming out, she's like, the more I push back against her, the worse it gets. This is awful. She's going to kill me. I can't do anything. So she eventually passes out as 50 Sue's just really laying into her. And as both her and Karen are unconscious, Deathstroke comes back out like, you did well, 50 Sue. And she's like, oh, no one's as strong as 50 Sue. And she's like, damn right they're not. So both her, Tanya, and Karen get thrown into a cell along with where Helena is. And she sees Karen and says, oh no, there's no hope if they got to you. And she just says, oh yes, I was done in by 50 Sue. It says to be continued in Earth 2 in issue like 27 or whatever. Fine, whatever. But here's the problem I have. First off, the writing for 50 Sue is just wrong. I don't know if Paul Levitz just doesn't know what was going on with 50 Sue, wasn't reading that stuff, but it just didn't feel right in character. Secondly, the fact that they made 50 Sue this all-powerful, like that's what she is. I agree. However, they made her very childish. They made her very like, hey, mean lady. Like, she sounds like she's 5. Meanwhile, in every other one of the books, it sounds like she's 10 minimum, if not a little bit older. So, I don't know. It just feels like a disconnect here where this is not a part of the main story at all. And on top of it, it really didn't accomplish much of anything. I would like to see this get paid off in some regard, but I'm not really holding my breath. So, I'm going to say that this is probably just like a 6 for me. It's not really doing much, but it's not awfully written. Constantine Future's End #1, written by Ray Fawkes, art by Juan Ferreyra. So, we pick up in some hotel room or something like that. Constantine's taking a deep breath, telling himself, all right, got to make this work. You only get one shot. And then all of a sudden, he lights a cigarette and just goes off. He's like, look, I've seen a lot of people that I've wanted to put in the ground. Like, truly awful people in my time. But I have never wanted to get back as anybody as much as you. And we see the person that he's talking to is the Helmet of Fate, who is talking back and saying like, oh, John Constantine, you stupid idiot. You think you can come after me? Fate, I will crush you. So then we cut over to a woman named Mary Bowen, who she forgot something at work. She has to drive back to go pick it up when all of a sudden she thinks, I don't want to do that. In fact, I have this calling that I go to this hotel and inside will be this helmet and I can put it on and get all of my heart's desires and I'm just going to go do that. So she walks into the hotel and the moment she gets there, dude knocks her in the back of the head with the back of a shotgun, knocking her out. So Constantine continues the conversation like, all right, you want to crush me? Then crush me. Let's see you do it. Oh, wait, that's right. You can't do anything unless somebody puts you on, and I'm not about to do that. So then Fate's like, hey, you could have worked miracles. Your magic, my magic, working together, like, we could have done anything at all. Like, you could have changed the destiny of both the worlds, Earth 1 and Earth 2. We still can, honestly. Like, our magic, we can go back and we can fix everything that needs to happen. And Constantine's like, bro, you're gonna want to shut up. Because all of this misery that I've had in my life is because of you. Like, we knew that you had the power to stop this stuff of the war between the Earths, and we were looking for you in order to stop it, but, like, you just would not be found, and therefore all of this stuff happened. I lost so many good people because of it. And the Helmet of Fate's like, yeah, all right, well, now you got a vendetta with me, but if you want to fix it, then you got to make a deal with me now. That's the only way this works. So we see another guy do the same thing Mary Bowen did. He has this calling, and so he goes to get the Helmet of Fate, but then he's knocked out by the guy in the hallway. And we see this guy in the hallway is working with John, and he's like, all right, this is very quickly escalating here. I didn't expect it to be two people this quickly. He better hurry up with what he's doing in there. So we see that John's still trying to, like, talk to him, say, yeah, you like to play dirty, Fate, obviously. And he's like, me? What about you, man? You've got all this guilt inside of you. I see how much it is, and that's the only reason that I'm able to reach out in the first place. So at this point, John's calling out, like, yeah, okay, well, either way, if we join powers, you're talking about time travel. Like, clearly I've already thought about that, but, like, the dangers involved are far too much. There's no way to make that work now. And Fate's like, you already made that mistake. I know you did, but you were casting it improperly. With my help, and Constantine's just pissed off at that point. He's just like, oh, what? Now you care so much more now? Now you care about the fate of the world? Yeah, clearly not. But he gets so pissed off that he picks up the helmet, and that's enough for Fate to start latching in. He uses his magic to pull himself closer and closer to John's head, and he's like, oh, you think you needed to wear me? No. You just need to touch me. That's all it really takes. So John starts screaming out. He's like, wait, hold on. We can make a deal, please. No, don't do this. So that he puts the helmet on, and Fate now has John Constantine. And the moment that happens, all of a sudden, a bunch of sealing spells and stuff like that appear around the room, and something happens. First, we cut back downstairs. More and more people arrive. And finally, we see that there's a whole group of them, like 6 at once. And one of them's a cop who has a gun. And he says, like, Fate calls. And the guy who's working with John is like, okay, this seems a little bit extreme now. I was told they would all be basically sleepwalking, but this one's got a gun. So what am I supposed to do here? So we cut over and see what happened to Fate. And he is standing before Anubis. And Constantine is still talking to him, basically saying, hey, you know exactly what's going on. I've got you right in my pocket. And Fate's like, no, you're wearing me. Like, how is this possible? Or I'm wearing you. And he's just like, no. Look, this whole thing, this room of Anubis, it's apparently the auditorium of Anubis. And it's what happens. It's some sort of spell that happens like when you die or something. And it's essentially just calling forward Anubis, and he's going to have a fair challenge with Fate, and there's no way that Fate can even overpower Anubis here. Like, it's too much. And Fate's even saying, like, oh, you're gonna have a god come down and try to judge me? Yeah, okay, fine, do it. I'm not scared. I'm totally cool with that. So Constantine pops out, and he's like, all right, cool, here I am. And then Fate just blasts him in the head, and he's like, no. And he steps out of a nearby portal, and he's like, that's not gonna work. You can't kill me in the Auditorium of Anubis. You got to do this fair, all right? Only the big guy up there is helping right now. And Fate's like pissed off. He's like, there's no way that you could get Anubis to agree to do this. Like, you are nothing but like a pathetic little sorcerer. I am freaking Fate. And he's like, well, maybe, I got a little bit more to me than you think. So Constantine points out, saying, I've got a challenge for you, just a single rule, and if you can do it, then you're free to go. If not, then you die. That's how this works. And Constantine says, prove to me that you've ever given a damn about anybody else besides yourself. And Fate's just like, you stupid idiot. Okay, you want to talk about like all the plagues that I've diverted, all the people that I've rescued, the innocents, the evils that I've banished? And Constantine's like, hey man, if you've got an example, do it, prove it, do it. And immediately Fate's just like, man, do you understand what you've been done here? Like, with the Anubis scroll, even if I'm killed, you also have to die. And Constantine's like, yeah, I know, but I think this is worth it. I absolutely believe that this is worth it. And then Constantine points out, like, you don't even know what's going on out there, do you? And Fate's like, my altruism is unquestionable. You can ask the gods themselves. And he's like, no. I mean what's going out there right now. You were summoning a bunch of people to try to get to you, to try to put you on, because you were so scared of whatever my tiny little sorcerer magic was going to do to you. And you have no idea what they're going through. Like, they are actively fighting and killing each other out there, and you just don't even care. You have no care for anybody else except yourself. It is all selfishness with you. So prove to me I'm wrong. Prove to me that all of that stuff out there is not currently happening. Because here's the thing. The best magician of the time that you claim to be, like, I'm not even the best magician of my time. The best magician is some humble dude who's just doing incredible magic and, like, doesn't make a big thing out of it. Those are the best magicians. You and I, we suck, and we deserve this. So he basically stares down Fate, and Fate has nothing to say, nothing to add, and Constantine's like, all right, challenge is over. We're done. You lose. So Anubis reaches down, grabs hold of Fate, and Fate starts freaking out. He's like, you can't kill me. I'm Fate. I swear to this isn't how this ends. And Anubis just swallows Fate whole, and that's the end of him. So Constantine comes back out, and turns out it was a trick. This wasn't Anubis. Fate's really dead, but this wasn't Anubis. This was some powerful demon that was kept inside of like a prison scroll or something, and he made a deal with Constantine saying, you are now free from the prison scroll. You will possess the helmet of Fate. All you got to do is pretend to still be Nabu, the spirit of the helmet, do a bit of Egyptian stuff, and you are allowed to bargain with people however you like. However, the deal is that you have to make them do altruistic things. That's what you get out of your prison cell, but you have to do good things, because otherwise Constantine's coming back for you. So he leaves the room. We see Lloyd was the name of the guy who was defending Constantine this whole time. He's shell-shocked. He's seen people getting shot all around him. He's upset. And Constantine's like, hey man, you good? And he's just like, no, I'm not good. You told me these people would be sleepwalking. Someone just killed somebody. And Constantine's like, but you didn't kill anybody, right? And he's like, no, they did it each other. I did my best. I did what I had to do. And he's like, awesome, great, let's get out of here. So Lloyd asks if he got everything he was looking for, and he's like, yep, absolutely did. So why don't you and I go get a drink? And it says next Earth 2. So I don't know what that implies. I don't know if we're going to Earth 2 in Constantine, or if it's just this story's going to be followed up in Earth 2. But yeah, no, it's a good story. I kind of butchered a lot of Constantine's arguments because it is very involved, but I think that the arguments he gives for Nabu here is very well set up and paid off. And the idea that, like, the greatest sorcerer of all time is someone that no one's ever heard of. I like that as a concept. I like the idea that there is someone who is just so incredibly powerful, but then is like a monk about it, just doesn't need that sort of trying to become the greatest of all time. He just is. So all in all, I think I'm probably going to end up giving this one like a 7.5. I think it's a solid next entry to like the Constantine story, and it feels like a good 5 years have passed of him being like desperate to correct things that went wrong. So yeah, solid story, and looking forward to its continuation. Infinity Man and the Forever People, Future's End, #1. God, that's a mouthful. Written by Dan DiDio and Keith Giffen, art by Philip Tan. So we open up with Mark Moon Rider, I believe. Maybe Mark Moonbeam. I don't know. Mark. He wakes up, he's screaming out, "Dreamer, no!" And as he looks around, he sees his, I think it's girlfriend, Dreamer, is there. And she's like, "Oh, good, you're awake. I was so worried about you." And he's like, "Where am I? Where's the team? What's going on?" And he stumbles around for a little bit. And it's like, hey, we're in the Cadmus Singularity, which is the only place where New Genesis and Apocalypse are coexisting. And he's like, yeah, no, I know about this place. I've heard about it. But, like, how do we get here? This place looks deserted. And apparently there was a war with the Lanterns, the Second Lantern War, and the New Gods. Like, this was neutral territory for them because things got real bad after that. So there was a place of peace between them. And so Dreamer's just kind of leading them around and saying, like, yeah, look, there's a bunch of portals and stuff like that. All of them, like, it leads to all, like, the 52 universes. It's a whole thing. We can go anywhere we want here. And Dreamer basically says, we can't go anywhere. Like, we have to stay here. And Mark's like, what do you mean? Like, why do we want to stay here? Where's the team? Where is everybody? And he grabs hold of Dreamer's arm, and she's like, please, you're hurting me. I don't want to be hurt by you again. And he's like, hold up. Did I do this? Is this my fault? What did I do? Is this about Agog? And she's like, oh, you never told me about your plans to resurrect a dead god. The team trusted you. I trusted you. And he's like, oh, yeah, things got complicated. I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. And then all of a sudden, one of the portals opens up and a bunch of parademons come out. So they got to fight against them briefly. We see that Mark is tearing through a few of them, trying to keep Dreamer behind because she's so frail and unable to fight. But then we see, nope, she's fully able to fight. She's able to push him through the portal and manage to kill him. And he's like, okay, not sure where that came from, but sure, let's roll with it. So he uses his own powers to, like, shock one of the parademons dead, and just like, there, that should stop him. And because the boom tube is open, he's like, hey, we can leave, let's go before it's too late. But ultimately she says, like, no, it's already closing down, it's too much. So at this point, Mark really presses and says, okay, no more changing subjects, like, tell me what happened to all the others. And she says, well, there was a final battle. It was Lord Agog's assault on Earth, and the planet was quarantined, and we were fighting against this beast that comes from New God technology. But it was just the 3 other people in our group. I'm blanking on their names for the life of me. And they managed to come together, and they made Infinity Man. They came together and Voltroned it up. But, like, it was only the 3 of them, so it wasn't as powerful. And they were fighting against OMAC. And they managed to take out OMAC, but there were a bunch of OMACs, and they were not able to deal with that. Infinity Man was no longer infinite. He was captured, and I don't even know if the rest of the team is even still alive. And immediately Mark's like, well, why the hell weren't we there? Like, what were we doing without the fight? Is this because of Agog? Like, I don't remember anything. Why don't I remember anything? And as he starts panicking, he looks around, he sees this big-ass door to the side, and he's like, I need to get through that door. I'm going in there, and you can't stop me. And she's like, no, please don't. And he's like, nope, I'm going to do it. So he opens up the door, and he knows that there's answers on the other side. And on the other side is Dreamer, and she's asleep. And he's like, I'm sorry, but you're Dreamer, and you're awake. Who the hell is this? And she's like, I'm asleep, and my powers allow me to make things in my dream, and it allows me to make things real, and we're not real. And she's like, what do you mean we're not real? I'm real. I'm here. Look at me. I'm doing my own thing. And she's like, no, Mark, you died during everything that happened. Like, you died, and I'm using my powers to dream you back to life. And that's why you can't leave this place, because this is where my sleeping body is. Like, I can't let you get too far away from that. That's the only way this works. And he's like, okay, so this is just a nightmare. I hate every moment of this. I betrayed you, I betrayed the team, and I ultimately resulted in the deaths of everybody. So, no, if this is like your version of hell for me because of everything I did, yeah, it's working. But ultimately, yeah, we've got to just get past this. We're moving on, and I've got to get out of here. So he activates one of the boom tubes again before Dreamer can get to him. And she's like, no, please don't. You got to stay here in my dreams. And he goes into the boom tube, and he's like, oh, something's not right, Dreamer. Not real. I'm not real. Nothing's real. And then all of a sudden he gets destroyed by the boom tube because obviously he can't go through it. So Dreamer gets sad. She turns off the boom tube. She walks over to her own body, and she says, hey, wake up. You've got to try again. And the last page is Mark waking up again, saying, Dreamer, no. So, time loop, except the worst possible type. I'm a bit torn. So, the issue itself is not bad. I think it's an interesting concept, and I think that there's some cool parts that they play with, and then, like, the bookends to it are also very interesting there. It's actually playing with a good amount of, like, things that are actually going to happen in continuity rather than just this weird Future's End timeline, like the Lantern War thing that's definitely happening in Green Lanterns. So I like that. The downside is Infinity Man has had 3 issues before this came out. I have no attachment to this team. I don't even know these characters' names. Mark something. So it's hard for me to really care the fact of like, oh, I betrayed the team and like Lord Agog and all this stuff. Like, I don't know what they're talking about, and this book doesn't do a good job of reminding me what's going on. So ultimately, it just falls a bit flat for me. But I can recognize the concepts themselves are decent. So overall, I think I'm probably going to end up giving this one just a little bit lower than it probably deserves if like someone really knows about Infinity Man. But for me, it's like really, really, really high 6.5, but I just can't justify giving it the 7. So if you like Infinity Man, check it out. Otherwise, it's here. New Suicide Squad Future's End #1, written by Sean Ryan, art by, I forget already, Andre Coelho. So we open up in Belle Reve, which is of course now entirely underground, and we meet up with Deadshot, who's just sitting in his cell, and he's like, oh, I guess they forgot about us. I haven't been part of the Suicide Squad for a while, and that's mainly because I lost my arm. So all of a sudden an alarm starts going off, and we hear gunshots, explosions, stuff like that, and Deadshot's like, what in the hell? What's going on? And as his entire glass front to his cell explodes, he looks up and he's like, oh my god, no way. And it turns out it's Amanda Waller, who's got a buzz cut and a rifle, and she's just pissed. And he's like, Waller, where have you been? What's going on? And she's like, I'm hiding. I didn't like where all this was going, so I just left. I disappeared. I was going to destroy it from the outside, but now I need your help. You in? And he's like, I'm missing an arm. And she's like, I know you're missing an arm, but here's the thing. I still think you've got some gas in your tank, and they try to make you into a weapon. So you think you can handle that? And he's like, all right, yeah, sure, why not? So she says, all right, I want to get the rest of you guys together. And he's like, guys, what guys? So then they make their way to Black Manta's cell. And he's just catatonic. He's just sitting there. And Deadshot's like, what happened to him? He was smart before. And she's like, same thing that happened to you. Like, they tried to enhance you, make you like part weapon. Same thing they did with him. They tried to download Deathstroke's brain into him. And as they enter the cell, Black Manta gets all like kung fu, like ready to fight or whatnot. And it's like, yeah, they thought he was going to become like the ultimate soldier and whatnot. Turns out just fried his brain. So she pulls out like a fish stick and says, you want a fish stick? Is that what you want? And he's like, yeah, fish stick. So then we go down to like the basement, and Harley is on Venom, and she is hulking out, and Deadshot's like, I didn't even think she was still alive. And just like, yep, nope, she's been kept down here, no interaction, too dangerous otherwise, but she's been roided up with Venom, so I'm gonna go down and talk to her. And Deadshot's like, are you nuts? And he's just like, no, I know more about her than anyone, and she hates the people who did this more than she hates me. So she's definitely going to go for it. So Waller walks up and just immediately makes contact. And Deadshot's just like, man, she can get us to do anything. So now we got the group of 4. They start making their way back out through the building and get into a mail carrier van in order to go take care of whatever it is they want to take care of here. And it's like, all right, here's the thing. None of you guys are really cared about. Like, you're all forgotten, and they kept on trying to improve you until they realized they didn't even need you anymore, and that's why you've all been stuck down here. But a few months ago, I read that the government bought up a huge amount of land in Texas, and that's what I was looking for. That's the thing I was waiting, because the government is building their own army of bad guys in here. They are making clones and putting personalities of villains into them. And as we break into this building, we see just the whole newborn delivery wing, and just like, oh yeah, no, these are all going to grow up to be like supervillains sooner than you know it. And Deadshot's like, I don't think I like this future. And Waller's like, cool, let's blow it up. So as they start walking their way down, they're trying to find the central hub, and they hear this tapping noise, this tinging noise. And it's just like, what the hell is that? And as they turn the corner, they see 2 teenage Jokers, actual like clones of the Joker, and they're like, oh, you guys want to play murder? And immediately Harley's like, oh no, and she freaks out, launches herself at one of them, is about to punch his face in. He's got an acid flower, so he just sprays it in her face. One of them has a squirt gun with acid in it, fires it in the general direction. Everyone else dodges except for Black Manta, because he's brain dead, and he just takes it to the chest. As soon as he starts feeling it, he kicks the other Joker in the face, which causes that Joker kid to like cry. Black Manta feels so upset about how he made a kid cry that he walks over saying fish stick to him, and the Joker revealed like, I was just messing with you. And he stabs him through the chest and starts beating him with the handle of the knife, saying that he's a fruit punch fountain. And then the other one puts a bomb on Harley's back, and because she's so muscular, she can't get it off, and she ends up exploding. And Waller and Deadshot are like, they're done for, they're gone, we got to take the distraction and move. So they keep moving their way into the deeper in the facility. And Deadshot's like, are you sure you know where we're going, man? It seems like we're walking in circles. And she's like, no. Central hub's right down here. I'm positive of it. So they start getting fired at. And as they look up at the air, they see early 20s Deathstroke. And it's like, oh God, they cloned a Deathstroke. All right, this is my job now. You go, Waller. You do what you need to do. I'm going to take this guy. And she's like, seriously? And he's like, yep, seriously. So Waller goes off. The young Deathstroke's just like, guns don't seem like much of a fair fight. So, how about you and I? And he's like, then again, any fight that you get in isn't going to be a fair fight, gesturing to his arm. And then Deadshot's like, dude, they literally took out your eye. Like, I know you didn't have an accent that required that. And he's like, well, everything had to be perfect. So, yep, let's go ahead and try to kill each other. But we're going to use swords. So he pulls out 2 swords, passes one over to Deadshot. And then Deadshot's like, this seems less fair than guns would have been. But Deathstroke's like, oops, sorry. So they start fighting. And Deadshot is just taking all the hits. He's getting kicks, he's doing whatever, and Deathstroke is just on him like, I got all the skill of the original with none of the mileage. Like, I am absolutely the future here. And you're old, you're useless, you're a waste of everyone's time. And Deadshot's like, oh, you think you got everything figured out, but I've got 2 lessons that you don't know about. And Deathstroke tries to plunge a sword at Deadshot. Deadshot turns over, and the sword gets plunged into his, like, nub of an arm. And he's like, number 1 is use your weaknesses. And he whips the sword around to like bash Deathstroke in the face. And he says, number 2 is stick to what you're good at. And he picks up his pistol and just shoots Deathstroke in the head. So Deadshot's definitely bleeding out. Like, you don't get stabbed in the nub and survive it. But he hears over the comms, Amanda Waller says, hey, I'm in. I made it. I've shut down the main hub. We did it. And as Deadshot's bleeding out, he's like, it was good to be useful one last time. And I was glad that I could have done one more thing above ground. I wonder where I'll go next, because sometimes I forget I'm not dead. And the last panel just goes black. So it's a nice little story. I don't mind it. Final story of Deadshot here. It's a good self-sacrifice, and it finally follows up on the term of Suicide Squad, because clearly going into this, it was a suicide mission to begin with. So Nah, I like it. It's a good little beat here. I think I'm probably going to give this one a... I'll do a 7.5. I debate with the 8, but it's just not quite on that level. It's still fine, but it is a bit basic at points. But I think that's kind of what the series needs. You know, it just needs a basic story of, let's just go in there and shoot some stuff. And it's going to be cool. We don't got to make it this whole deep thing. So 7.5 for this. Superman Unchained number 8, written by Scott Snyder, art by Jim Lee. So last issue, the whole thing with crystals and Superman had some battle armor and whatever. It genuinely doesn't matter, but final part of it was Wraith was beating up Batman and Wonder Woman in the Batcave, and then Superman showed up and says, all right, let's fight. So we cut to the Gobi Desert, where I guess Wraith was thrown to, and we have Superman's narration just being like, oh, he's stronger than you. He's faster than you. There's nowhere on Earth you can run from him. How are you going to take out Wraith, Superman? And Superman says, I have no idea. But we see him bringing an entire freighter ship over the Gobi Desert just to ram it into Wraith as he's laying there in the Gobi Desert. And Wraith is like, all right. That's something. That looks heavy. Let me take that off your hands. And he uses his abilities to do something to the ship that makes it unstable and it starts to explode. So Superman's caught in the debris of that. Meanwhile, Wraith walks over, pulls a Loki on him from Avengers and just grabs his cape and starts whamming him back and forth into the ground. Does like a whirlwind thing and just throws him all the way to Annapurna. It looks like the Himalayas, so let's go with that. Superman goes through several mountains. A couple of climbers are freaking out because it makes this earth-shattering kaboom. And Wraith is like, all right, that was loud, but I think I heard the sound of 2 small little cracks. Were those your ribs? Did I break your ribs? You can take a minute if you need it. And Superman's like, okay, how would Batman fight? Bruce he'd look for the low blow. He'd do something with that. Maybe I should go with that. So Superman just turns around, his eyes are glowing, and he just grabs Wraith, flies up into the air. And he's like, he might be stronger and faster, but ultimately he's like Bruce in that he needs oxygen. He needs to breathe. So I'm just going to take him out into space and hope for the best. So we see him just going further and further. Eventually he keeps on throwing punches. He punches him all the way to the moon, into the moon, through the center of the moon, and out the other side. And he's like, all right, there. He's fading. He's almost out. I did it. And then Wraith all of a sudden starts glowing green. And he gets even spikier than before, and he lashes out at Superman. And Superman's like, wait a minute, hold on. He's manipulating his energy. He's making the radioactivity of kryptonite. That's what? So Wraith grabs hold of him. They both plummet back down to the earth into somewhere in the ocean. And Wraith is just punching and kicking him on the ocean floor. Another rib breaks. And Wraith immediately Clark's just like, okay, I have no idea how I'm supposed to do this. Lois tells me to dig down, and wait a minute, that's it. And then all of a sudden, Superman just escapes the pummeling by digging a tunnel at super speed straight down through the Earth's crust. So 420 miles beneath the surface of the Earth, between the upper and lower mantle, Wraith pops out and he's like, Superman, don't run from me, let's end this. And then all of a sudden, Wraith starts getting woozy. And Superman's like, hey, Wraith, no, I'm not running, I'm here, but you look a little bit tired. And Wraith is like, what did you do to me? And he's like, oh, not me, your home planet. See, your powers, you said, came from channeling electromagnetic energy. But down here, so close to the Earth's core, the electromagnetic forces are so strong that they're going to interfere with those fancy powers of yours. So I don't have any sun charging me up. You don't have electromagnetic powers. We're going to solve this the old-fashioned way. Welcome to a fair fight. So they start trading punches. And Superman calls him out for basically saying, like, you have always, you worked with General Lane. You've always had an army backing you up. And you can turn invisible as well. So, like, you could always just hide from stuff. You've never had to be out there and actually be in the fight. You've never had to be visible and public and making enemies left and right. And here's the thing you don't understand, Wraith, that when you are forced to do that, you actually have to learn how to fight. And we see him using his cape to like choke out Wraith. He throws some good punches, flips him into like some magma. And in the end, it seems like he actually manages to win. He actually managed to take him out. So he tells Wraith, like, what was buried in the signal? The Earth Stone. Who's behind it? Talk. And Wraith is like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. But you know what? It's crazy. I thought you and I could be friends, allies, when all you are is... And then Superman just pushes him down into the lava and just like, all right, we're not friends. Because my friends, they know how to take responsibility for their own decisions. Screw you. So he puts back on his cape and he flies up out of the Earth's mantle. He heads back up to the Fortress of Solitude, and Sam Lane is just like, where's Wraith? What did you do to him? I swear to God, Superman. Superman just shoots him a look and just be like, shut up. Lois, what's going on with the Earthstone? What's up with the crystal? And she's like, I don't know. Inside the crystal signal, what do you think is in there? And he's like, I don't know, but you felt it too, right? It's a consciousness. There's something in it, something transmitting through it or waiting to transmit. And it's coming from the center of the solar system. And Lois is like, the sun? That doesn't make any sense. And then all of a sudden it starts sparking with energy. This big black like electricity comes out of it. And all of the like technology around them goes dead. And Sam Lane's like, what did you do, man? And he's like, no, it wasn't me. It was the crystal. There's something in there. You can hear it. And he uses his super hearing and he hears help me out in the distance. And he follows it, and out walking in the Antarctic is Jimmy Olsen. You remember Jimmy Olsen was in the story? He was abducted by Lex Luthor. Well, he's shown up here. He's freezing cold because he's in a t-shirt. And Lois is like, Jimmy, who did this to you? And Jimmy raises up his hand, which has like a gauntlet attached to it. And he says, it was him. And then all of a sudden, Lex Luthor's hologram comes up. And Superman's like, Lex, I definitely do not have the time for this. And he's like, oh, I know. We're in danger and all that, Superman. That's what I'm talking about. And Sam's like, what are we talking? Why are we listening to this maniac? And Superman's like, it's an invasion. And Lex pulls up some hologram stuff and he basically says, yeah, so Wraith, all that stuff and like everything going on, this was all just the preliminary stuff of an invasion. It is a force that's coming, and now that we've unlock the Earthstone and all that, we've shown these people that like they can come here and they can take their stuff. It's basically an investment is what they were doing here. So yeah, they're here to swoop in and take it all. And Sam Lane's just like, oh, Wraith wouldn't do that. He's not a traitor. And just like, no, of course he's not a traitor. He's more like a Trojan horse. He was the gift, and now comes the thing that was inside of the gift. So Lex is like, oh yeah, but like, you're still misunderstanding Superman. The Trojan horse in this story isn't Wraith. It's you. And he's like, me? How's it me? And Lex is like, here. And then all of a sudden the gauntlet on Jimmy's wrist opens up, and inside is some glowing liquid. And he's like, this is solar fuel. I made it from the miniature solar tower I had back in issue 1. You remember that? He literally says, do you remember that? As if, I don't know, this book got hit with a ridiculous amount of delays and you wouldn't remember that. And he said, yeah, anyway, you take this and you're going to be able to do the same thing that Wraith did, but like even more powerful. Like you're going to become an atomic bomb that can blow up their entire invasion fleet out near the sun. And Superman's like, that's how you want us to do things? Build a bigger bomb? And Lex is like, yep, that's right. And you're going to be the biggest bomb of us all. Now, bombs away. And that's where the issue ends. So will Superman become an atomic bomb and destroy an entire fleet of alien invaders? Whatever. I think I said this last issue, and I think I probably said the issue before as well, but this plot entirely got away from me. I don't know. Like, Lex shows up here and he's just like, oh yeah, Jimmy, hey, I've got this whole plan and then like all this other stuff, but like, I don't remember any of this. I don't know what the hell's going on here. They literally have Lex say like, hey, you remember when I made that solar tower and all this stuff? It's like, no, I don't. That was over a year ago. The first issue of this book happened in March of 2013. We are a year and a half away from that, and we're still not done this 9-issue book. Ugh. Like, I understand that if you're reading this for the trade, if you are actually just picking up this book, starting at issue 1, and just spend your evening reading it, you're not going to know about the delays. It's going to be perfectly fine to read, and that's fine. That's okay, but that's not the point of this show. The point of this show is you read it as it was coming out in the New 52, and it is unacceptable, the fact that we are still doing this. Is the plot okay? It's just an extended fight scene. Then we get to the Lex Luthor stuff, and I just lose it entirely. So all in all, I can't really recommend this. It may look great. It does, and I think there's some cool visuals to it of like Superman punching right through the moon or down fighting down in like the caverns of the mantle. I'm down with all that, but like it's just lost all goodwill with me, and I can't really forgive that much. So I'm gonna put this one at a 6. It sucks because it is a very well written book, and like objectively it should be higher, but like their release schedules and stuff like that, the way the book is released is just as much part of the story as how much you have in each individual issue, and I think that is something that needs to be taken into account here. Batman Eternal number 23, written by Snyder, Tynion, Fawkes, Lehman, and Seeley, art by Dustin Nguyen. So, this issue picks up in a dogfighting ring, and we see that a guy who runs it named Mr. Ibanescu is like, all right, I'm bored, go ahead and do the thing. And his assistant's just like, are you sure? We're so much more alive. And Ibanescu's like, oh, it's not about the money, it's about the message. This is the black market. And we stole it from Tiger Shark, and we got to show that, like, we're willing to just throw it away. That's how much we're like power the Ibanescu family has. And we see that in the middle of this dogfight, they open up a tiny cage that contains a baby snow leopard. And Catwoman is for some reason in the rafters, and she's like, Jesus Christ, man, I was going to show up and like just rob you, but like this is a next level of creep, you total dick. And then all of a sudden gunshots start going off, everything else. Turns out Tiger Shark does not like being stolen from, so him and his gang come in and just like, oh, you've dared to steal from this man, we're going to take back what you took. And they list out like how his suit is made from the finest Serbian tiger, and this gun handle is elephant tusk, and all this other stuff. So they start firing shots, shooting dogs, stuff like that. And then Tiger Shark sees the snow leopard has already been like stained slightly, so it's just like, fur's ruined anyway, and just shoots the snow leopard. And that's when Catwoman's like, you shot a cat and you ruined my ice, how dare you. So she swoops in, grabs the snow leopard, and takes off. And she's like, oh, I'll see you again, Tiger Shark, we ain't done yet, how dare you. So cutting over to Beacon Tower, where Architect and Hush are still doing their thing. Architect calls up Hush, or Hush calls him up, says like, hey, good job with the whole thing. I killed the guy who built the tower. And Architect's like, what? That was my job. I was supposed to do that. And Hush is like, no. I said he would die, and I'm the one who did it. So anyway, Batman's about to hit you. You better focus on that. And then Batman comes in and just bonk, hits him in the head. So we then go over to Selina Kyle, who is super upset because she is unable to save the snow leopard. It's just too late. She tried her best. And then all of a sudden, this young girl shows up behind her and just like, hey, I'm sorry about your cat. And she's like, Jesus, man, how'd you get in my house? He's like, oh, my name's Jade, and I followed you home from the cemetery a few days ago, so I know where you live. By the way, he needs to see you in Blackgate. He said you're a good thief, but you couldn't get in the prison yourself, so I'm here to lead you in there. And she's just like, oh, he's using kids now? And she's like, no, I go into Blackgate all the time. I sell cigarettes and candy, but they love peanut butter and soft toilet paper. That's a real thing. So Catwoman's just like, hey, you know my identity. You can't just leave. And she's like, oh, I'm not going to tell anybody. I don't care. By the way, her name is Jade. I don't know if I said that. So we get like a 2-panel thing in the Gotham Underground. Some demon-looking things are attacking Killer Croc, and he just rips their heads off and says Killer Croc's people needs him. So back with Architect and Batman. Architect's like, oh, the Gate family. My name is Zachary Gate, and the Gate family built this city, and now it's a garish monstrosity, this Beacon Tower. And Batman just starts beating the crap out of him. He's just like, you are a disgraced member of that family. Makes you the perfect pawn for Hush, so don't worry about it. And we see in the Batcave, Penny 2, aka Julia, is seeing some things popping up on the monitors, and she's trying to figure out what it all means. We head over to Blackgate, where after crawling through the sewers, Jade and Catwoman arrive in Rex Calabrese's cell, I guess, or maybe it's the sewers, hard to say. And he's just like, yeah, no, I know it stinks. Sorry you had to go through that. There's a reason I don't use it to escape, you know? And she's like, oh, it also is super tight or whatever. But also, and she just grabs hold of Rex and she's like, you're using a little kid to get to me? And he's just like, oh, hey, you're the one who wasn't answering me anymore. I knew the only way I'd get you here is to piss you off enough that you were going to show up anyway. She's like, oh, what? She's 10 years old. It's like 9, same age as you. And then Catwoman just punches him in the face and says, like, when you abandoned me, when you gave me away, when you stopped being my father. And at that point, Jade gets in and, like, hits her in the leg with some, like, random piece of wood. She's like, hey, that guy pays me. Don't do that. So at that point, Rex clarifies, nah, Jade runs with Killer Croc. She's just a fence. She does stuff through the underground. No big deal. And then apparently this was the same girl who was saved by Killer Croc a few issues ago, and she just managed to ditch the social service worker before they even made it there. So at this point, Catwoman's just like, okay, whatever. Point being is Selena Kyle is an orphan. She likes it that way, and I'm not going to do anything to change that because I like who I am. So I'm going to get out of here. And Rex is like, hold on. There's a reason I wanted to see you. I need to make sure you hear me out. Look, things are bad out there. There's no structure. There's no kingpin, but there's a natural order to things. There's supposed to be someone who can unite the different crime families. And Catwoman's like, what? Yeah, you, Rex Calabrese the Lion? And he's like, no, not me, not anymore. You. So back over to Beacon Tower. Batman's finally done beating the crap out of Gate. And he just holds him up and just being like, all right, you're going to tell me what I need to know about Hush, or else I swear to God. And he's just like, oh, I can't go back. I can't go back to Arkham. And then all of a sudden, Julia's in his ear saying like, hey, Batman, it took me a few minutes here, but you got some serious seismic activity happening below the tower. And Batman's like, uh-oh, hey, Architect, what did you do? And he's just like, oh, well, the resonator took a lot of energy, and I want to bring down this tower, so that energy's got to go somewhere, and there are fault lines beneath Gotham, so... And then all of a sudden, the tower starts crumbling, and like huge beams of metal start coming down. Architect takes the opportunity to turn on a wingsuit, I guess he had the whole time. And he's like, well, looks like the Beacon Tower's strong enough to stay up for now, but the rest of the energy's got to go somewhere. And we see down on the ground of Gotham, the roads are just being torn apart as everything is just crumbling in this massive earthquake. Catwoman is coming out of the other side of the sewer, outside of Blackgate. When all of a sudden the earthquake hits, Jade almost falls into a crevice, but Catwoman uses her whip to save her. And the rest of the people in the town are looking around just like, oh God, was it a bomb? Was it an earthquake? What's going on? But Hush comes out and he grabs this random dude just being like, hey, why is Beacon Tower still up? That thing should have fallen down. And he's just like, I don't know, everything else fell. And Hush is just like, yes, that's it. You know, Aristotle once said, and then he said some other random crap. And he's like, yes, so Beacon Tower remains a symbol of the Wayne family, as aloof and unmoved as chaos continues to move throughout Gotham. So he's turning it into a positive anyway. Jade is brought to Dr. Leslie Tompkins by Selena, and she's just like, hey, careful with this one. She's going to be sneaky. And Tompkins is just like, yeah, I've got plenty of practice back in your day. So we then see the rest of the conversation that happened between her and Rex. And Rex is basically saying, like, look, after your fence died over in your book, you swore you'd never let anyone get hurt again, but you didn't stop stealing. You know the game is more important than people. Like, I was never that smart. I got a lot of people hurt. That's what made me weak. But you can do this without people getting hurt. It's the only reason I don't try to get out of this place is because I think that you may think that you are Kyle, but truth is you're a Calabrese. You can unite the crime families and enforce the natural order of things. You can stop this gang war in Gotham. And Catwoman's like, all right, I'm bored. I'm getting out of here. So Rex just keeps shouting the same thing, saying like, oh, innocents are getting killed in the crossfire. People and cats. Does that matter to you? Cats too. So Catwoman, as she's leaving, says, oh, after spending some time with you, Dad, I remember why I like cats so much. So we then cut over to the mayor who's meeting with Bard, and the mayor's just like, Jesus Christ, look at an earthquake. On top of everything else, we got an earthquake, and Bard's like, Mayor, look, this is the worst Gotham has been since Zero Year. We have the earthquake going on, a crime war is happening, tearing through the streets. Arkham Asylum's haunted at this point. We got a bunch of kids in the Narrows who have a virus that's infecting them. Yeah, that's right. We almost forgot about that, but that's actually still happening. And Bart's just like, look, the only way to deal with this is You got to reach out to the military. You got to call the governor. You have to declare martial law in Gotham. So we'll see if that's where we go next issue. Doubt it. I think we probably got a few more issues till then. It's good. It's a nice little solid issue. I mean, I think that making it a Catwoman-centric one is a little weird, considering how little we've had from her over the course of the rest of the series. I feel like we should have like eased into her a bit more again until we finally got back to this. But if they got to make some big swings here, they got to make some big swings. It does kind of feel like they needed to get this particular part of the story out before the Catwoman Futures End tie-in, strangely enough, because I'm pretty sure that one is where she is like solidified herself as a gangster like leader. So it's a bit of a timing, a bit of an editorial thing, I'm sure, but it's not awful. I think it works where it is. Overall, I think this issue is probably I'll give it a flat 7. I don't feel strongly about it one way or the other. So it's good. It's a fine enough next chapter. Just not anything fantastic or blowing me away. Futures End number 19, written by Azzarello, Lemire, Jurgens, and Giffen, art by Scott Eaton. So this issue picks up in Terrifitech, where Batman Beyond, Terry McGinnis, and his little crew of other villains have decided to put their plan to action. So they're all in place. Everyone's good to go. Coyle is focusing on the security. He's doing magnetic stuff to make sure nobody sees anything. Key is making sure he can get into a secure vault where the U-Sphere is. McGinnis is making his way deeper into the building, running distractions. And Plastique is planting bombs in order to get them out when the time comes. And he's like, all right, everyone's good? Cool. I'm going to go off comms because I'm going to get shot at a lot, and I don't think you guys want to go deaf. So at that point, they say 4 minutes to rendezvous. Let's go. So we see that Terry is not actually going to get shot at that much. He has already put in like a bunch of sleeper gas into the place, and he's just, all right, are we really that much smarter in the future, Alfred? And Alfred's like, smarter? No, I guess. I don't know. So he's looking through computers, and we see him looking for the key to take down Brother Eye. And they mention Brother Eye was a satellite back in this time that they lost track of, and if they can just figure out where exactly that satellite went to, then they can basically hijack a missile and just blow it up from outer space. That's all they really need to do. So that's the plan here. So Terry just keeps on going through more and more of the computers, hijacking as much data as he needs, and he's like, all right, I think we're good enough. We should be good to go. Meanwhile, Plastique, looking throughout Terrifitech as she just waits for the signal, ends up coming across the room that has the robotic future body of herself in it. And she walks up to it and she's like wide-eyed trying to figure out what it is she's even looking at here. So Terry reconnects on the comms, just like, hey, you good? Everyone all right? And we see that Coyle and Key have managed to get their hands on one of the U-Spheres, and just like, yeah, we're at the rendezvous, but Plastique isn't here yet. So at that point, Terry asked Alfred like if he can track Plastique. He's doing his best, can't end up finding him. And he says like, okay, well, Coyle and Key, they're in place, right? Like they're already set up there. And he says, yeah, no, they're still in place. And he's like, all right, then go ahead and launch it. I'll deal with Plastique on my own. So we see the alarm starts going off. Coyle and Key are immediately caught up in the security thing. This was Terry's plan all along. He was never going to let these criminals go free with the U-Sphere. It was all just self-serving. Security guards come in and get them. Meanwhile, Plastique, she's like sobbing, having a mental breakdown over the body of this robot. And just like, oh, it's me. I saw it when it fell out of the shopping cart. It looked like I was looking into a nightmare mirror. And we see Terry is like about to attack Plastique from behind before he sees that she's crying. And he's like, okay, we should get out of here. And he grabs her hand and leads her out. So then we cut over to a rooftop in Metropolis, the offices of Fastlane, Lois's thing, and she's talking to a editor or story writer or something, saying like, oh, we're going to keep waiting. We're not going to upload the story. I want to talk to Superman first. We have to be 100% sure. And this other guy's just like, dude, this story's airtight. We know it's true. You got to be able to run this. This is so important. You've been holding off on the Red Robin story. And she's like, I don't know all the facts. There's a lot more we need. And he's like, yeah, well, the advertisers don't need that much. So he goes inside, and at that point, Superman, quote unquote, lands with Lois. And he's like, oh, finally, I thought he'd never go inside. And she's like, you could have come down with him here. It's not a big deal. So she's like, all right, look, we need to talk. Lois to Superman, or should I say Shazam. And it's a lot of back and forth here, but the general thing is Lois is like, give me a reason not to. Give me a solid reason why the world would be better off without this truth. And he's like, the world needs Superman. Like, they need this symbol. They need to look up to that. If they knew it was somebody else in this suit, then they're going to lose hope. Like, that's the long and short of it, is that that's what's most important here, is the hope and the ideals that Superman upholds are important enough. And she's like, I mean, but you're like Shazam. Like, you had your own superhero career. Doesn't it feel bad to have to step into Superman's shadow? And he's like, no, because I understand what he stands for. Like, if anything, I'm honored to do it. So, yeah. Don't run the story. I know how important this is, and you should too. And so he flies off. Lois hops on the phone, says, all right, I've made up my mind. Here's what we're going to do. And we cut off into deep space where the Atom, I'm blanking on his name, but he's calling out, trying to get a hold of, it's Dr. Raymond Palmer, of course. He's trying to get a hold of Hawkman and Frankenstein and all that. None of them are answering. When all of a sudden, one of Stormwatch's Shadow Lords appear, and he has no idea who that is. And the Shadow Lord introduces himself as like, basically the directors of Stormwatch, the people behind the scenes, the Shadow Cabinet. And he's like, hey, we made Stormwatch forever ago in order to watch out for Brainiac. This ship, this giant-ass ship that you think is a planet, is Brainiac. So Stormwatch needs to come back to be able to take it out. You are now in charge of Stormwatch, Dr. Raymond Palmer. And he's like, me? What? Huh? Why would it? No, look, you don't understand. I've done a lot of shrinking and growing and stuff like that, and it did something and it messed with my mind. I'm not really as good as I used to be. And this Shadow Cabinet guy walks over to Midnighter's corpse and says, well, become something better then. And Palmer seems to get an idea. We then go back over to Cadmus, where Deathstroke and Lana are running away from the possessed Power Girl that is actively trying to kill them, and being funneled through his Brother Eye, and Brother Eye is just like, oh, I'm impressed you've managed to fight off this form temporarily, Deathstroke. Maybe you would like to work for me. And he's like, will I get to live? And he's just like, oh, well, it'll delay your inevitable death. And she's like, oh, what? Why doesn't it save me outright? And she's like, oh, you'll eventually give me a cause to kill you. And Deathstroke's like, yeah, all right, smart enough. And he shoots Power Girl in the eyes, which gives him just enough of a second to tell Lana to get the hell out of there. And Lana's like, don't gotta tell me twice. So she bolts. Power Girl grabs hold of Deathstroke and says, all right, no more offers. You're dead now. And as she's about to throw a punch, 50 Sue shows up and says, hey, I thought we had a deal. There was a girl here as well. Did you do something to the girl? And Power Girl drops Deathstroke just like, Lana Lang's okay. She ran off into the woods. I didn't realize these were the two that you were talking about. And 50 Sue's like, all right, whatever. Just drop him, let him go. And Deathstroke's like, Jesus Christ, 50 Sue, did you make a deal with this thing, whatever's going on? And she's like, yeah, calls herself Brother Eye. Stupid name, I know. But yeah, it's the one in control of everything, of the island and Cole. And by the way, where is Cole? And Deathstroke's like, I thought you didn't like Cole. And she's like, well, that's why I thought it was competition. But clearly nobody's competition with me. So yeah, he's back in the cave. And Power Girl's like, all right, I don't even know I'm here anymore. I'm out. So Brother Eye just flies away. And Deathstroke's like, but seriously, what deal did you strike with Brother Eye to make this work? And she's like, oh, you don't want to know. And as Power Girl's flying away, 50 Sue's like, hey, boob window. This is a reminder not to mess with me. And she just like grabs hold of her body with telekinetic things and just throws her into the ground. And just like, oh, all right, that should be fine. And 50 Sue's just like, okay, look, I came here to an agreement with him. I'm going to need your help first, and I got to go fetch Lana because we're going to need a nurse. It's important to get that implant out of Cole. So we then cut one last page to New York City, where Tim Drake, who's not Tim Drake, closes up the bar, pulls out his iPad, and sees the news revealed that Shazam is Superman, written by Lois Lane. So yeah, it's here's the thing. I really like the structure of this issue. Like, we spend a good 3 pages on each of these plots, minimum. And it gives it time to develop. It gives it time to say, okay, this is what's happening with these characters. We get an actual evolution to the plot. Things move forward on each of those fronts. Do we get all of the plots? No, of course we don't. That's physically impossible. But we get enough that it makes it feel like real forward progress has been made. And that's what I hate about like half the issues of this series, is when they give me just a single page of all the plots, so it doesn't feel like anything's happening in any of them. More like this, please. That being said, I think out of all of it, the Superman stuff is the most interesting to me, and it also feels the most wasted out of this issue. Not because, you know, there's the reveal at the end. That's a big deal, clearly. But like the conversation of, oh, Superman's a symbol, he's too important, you can't run this article. They literally had that exact same conversation last issue. I didn't feel like it needed to be updated here. So a little bit of give and take on that, but everything else seems fine to me. It feels like the story is moving forward in this issue, so I'm going to give it I'll give it a 7. Feels like just a 7 territory. It still needs to do more than just be good at like moving a story forward. You actually got to do something to get higher than that, but 7's not bad. Keep that up and you might get out of this with like a C average. And that's it. That is all the comics that came out from DC Comics this September 10th, 2014. And yeah, not a lot of standout ones this week. I really front-loaded it with their Swamp Things and their Action Comicses and whatnot. But ultimately, it has not been as horrible of a month as I was expecting, but we're only halfway through. So why don't I tell you what's coming out next week, and we can just prematurely judge together here. So in no particular order, we have the Futures End tie-ins of Batman and Robin, Batwoman, Red Hood and the Outlaws, Batman/Superman, Supergirl, Superman/Wonder Woman, Green Lantern New Guardians, Justice League, Wonder Woman, Teen Titans, and Pandora. And then we also have the 2 weeklies of Batman Eternal and Futures End, but DC said, no, you don't get a week without one extra super-sized comic written by Grant Morrison. That's right, we have the next Multiversity issue, which is Multiversity, the Society of Superheroes, which I think is like Earth. God, I don't know. It's a lower number. I think it's like 22. I hope I'm right. I did a lot of research on Multiversity stuff to try to hopefully understand what is going on so I can explain it to you better, but like, it's Grant Morrison, man. Half that stuff just whoosh straight over my head. But yeah, no, not a lot else going on beyond that. Just 14 comics, not an awful one. In terms of anything else I want to tell you, I don't think there really is any. I am debating, and I desperately want your feedback on this. Please tell me what you think if you apply to this little group here. I am debating opening up a P.O. box specifically to receive other people's unwanted New 52 comics. I will give you nothing in return. I might mention you on this show, but I will give you absolutely no monetary value. But if that is something that is of any interest at all, of anybody who wants to just get rid of their comic books for the sake of making my life a little bit easier, please let me know. Beyond that, I don't really have much more to say. If you have any thoughts on any of the comics I've added this week, last week, any week at all, go ahead and hit me up in any of the social media places we are, which is to say like 2. We have a Discord, we have a subreddit, and we have a Patreon. The Discord is by far and away the place to go, unless you've got some money, in which case capitalism's a thing, so probably should hold on to that. But Patreon's also an option, I suppose. Anyway, all that said and done, thank you very much for watching, listening. However you consume this podcast, be sure to give it a positive interaction. Tell it looks nice today. Tell yourself that as well. We all need some internal positive interactions. Give yourself a hug. Do it in a public place. Don't stop when the cops say you should. I lost I lost my train of thought somewhere in there. Anyway, once again, thank you very much. I hope to see you next week. And always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.